Continuing the voyage through the filmography of Monty Hellman, here we have 1988's Iguana, a candidate for my favourite of his works. Now, I have heard an anecdote Noel Oakeshott relayed to me that Monty Hellman was only hired on this film, or Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 3, because its producer was a believer in numerology, and I think Hellman's phone number or address was to this, lunatic's liking. I did actually find verification for this online. To quote Monty Hellman in an interview on Film Threat, and it was for Iguana apparently, I got a call from a friend of mine who had been offered to do a movie. He was not available, but asked if I were interested. A couple of days later, I got a call from the producer. I found out the reason he called me from this list that he had was that my phone number had two sevens in it. He was into numerology and I had the right numbers, so that's how I got hired. Wonderful. This individual may have been one Franco Di Nunzio, who was facilitating an adaptation of a novel from Alberto Vazquez Figueroa, a novel inspired by the historical figure of Patrick Watkins. Watkins was an Irish sailor who found himself marooned on the Galapagos Islands from 1807 to 1809, apparently its first resident. The novel, published in 1982, dramatizes the period of Watkins' life, whose story had already been featured in an 1854 novella by Herman Melville as one of 10 sketches narrated within that text. Thank goodness that Hellman had been chosen, via whatever odd circumstances, to helm this production, as what was realized may very well be a masterpiece, in my opinion. An extraordinarily directed film, containing exemplary performances from all of the cast, but especially Everett McGill as the Iguana Obolus, the moniker of Watkins. Fabio Testi, a major cast member from Hellman's previous credited feature China 9 Liberty 37, is also a prominent player in Iguana. Shooting took place in the Canary Islands, on the island of Lanzarote. I read that it was chosen specifically due to its resemblance to Espanola Island in the Galapagos, where the events of the narrative are said to have taken place. The cinematography, credited to one Joseph M. Sivat, is phenomenal. It comes across as entirely natural light, although I suspect that some clever trickery and off-camera lights were set up, and I'm simply all the more impressed at this apparent seamlessness. Iguana is an ugly film. Obolus does not undergo a redemption arc. He is a sympathetic character, although he merely goes on to replicate the ugliness of his abusers. It is not a film with much faith in the human capacity for kindness and charity, or maybe it is actually illuminating a cycle and not something innate. Perhaps Obolus feels this way, as his actions at the very end of this film seem indicative of his intent to end a cycle forever. Not a happy experience, I'd only hesitate to call it a tragedy because Obolus is truly unlikable, despite our concern for his suffering during the film's earlier section. Once he becomes a tyrannic captain himself, Obolus wastes no time in abusing his power for his own control, conquest, and pleasure. I would highly recommend Iguana. It appears to have some degree of acclaim amongst those who have seen it. I imagine those who are on board with Hellman's prior films would find something to admire in Iguana. I think its filmmaking merits are superlative, and I consider its narrative to be ruthlessly moving, a highly stirring work. Not an easy watch necessarily, though an extremely impressive film. Hellman's next two films, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 3 and a segment in 2006 horror anthology Trapped Ashes, are sadly far from essential, although fortunately, Hellman would close his directorial career with an exceptional swan song. Tune in next time, and until then, have a brilliant day, night, wherever you may be.